It's back to school and it's back to Patch Tuesday. It's a light month, but we still have a lot of things to talk about it. Let's get to it in the Patch Report. Hello, everyone. I'm Dustin Childs, Head of Threat Awareness here at Trend Micro Zero Day Initiative and our Chief Patch Wrangler. As you can tell, I am on location here in our Dallas office in front of our living wall, ready to talk about some patches, the latest and greatest from Adobe and Microsoft. So let's get straight to it. Pretty light release from Adobe. We have 9 bulletins, 22 unique CVEs. There are 2 that I do want to point out. The first is in Cold Fusion. Adobe listed as priority 1. They usually have priority 3, but they do say this is not under active attack, so good to go there. Also, if you're running Cold Fusion, it's time to start thinking about migrating to something a little bit more modern. I'm not saying switch. I'm saying start thinking about a migration plan. That's all I'm saying. Up next is commerce. That is going to deal with money, so that's always something interesting. That patch is priority 2. Again, no exploitation in the wild, but something you want to keep up with. And there's always Acrobat. You always want to consider that. Everything else is priority 3. Nothing's public. Nothing's publicly known. Moving down to Microsoft, we have 80 new CVEs in our regular components, as well as one that's a little bit unusual, Xbox. That's right, we have an Xbox bug, so kind of fun to take a look at that. But we've got only one publicly known and then nothing under exploit. Let's take a look at this CVSS 9.8 though to start out with. This is HPC PAC, which is the high performance computing, and it's a remote code execution bug. It's pretty neat. Remote unauthenticated attacker, code execution on affected systems without user interaction. You go, hey, doesn't that sound like a worm? It sure does. It sounds like a worm. So this is technically wormable, although only between HPC PAC clusters that you would have deployed. And you should deploy these only in secure enclaves. Microsoft also recommends blocking TCP port 5999. I could paint that wall for $59.99 as well, but you just come on down to Big Gems and see. Next up, here it is again, 8 months in a row. 8 months in a row, an Office bug with the preview pane as an attack vector. I'm getting very, very close to turning off my own preview pane, just to say, let these folks figure it out. I don't know what's going on with them. But it continues to have a very bad run for Office bugs month after month after month. Up next, we have a Windows NTLM EOP privilege escalation vulnerability. This one's pretty awesome because it allows an authenticated, regular standard Windows user to escalate to system privileges on affected systems over a network. And that's pretty cool. While not a CVSS scope change, you usually have to go through kernel to get that. Going from a Windows user to systems, pretty handy. Microsoft also notes the exploitability relatively low, and that they expect to see attackers targeting this one. So definitely test and deploy this one pretty quickly. You can see that the one public here is an SMB EOP. Don't worry, it's not that important. It just gets you, it is authenticated, so nothing too special. Our critical ones here, and then you see just a whole bunch of important ones. Everything else is important other than the 8 critical bugs. And looking at the rest of the critical patches, there aren't a lot of really interesting things to look at. Graphics components, graphics kernels, they require authentication, and in some cases could be considered privilege escalations as much as anything else. There's a critical rated info leak in the Windows imaging component, but it only leaks random heap memory. So I don't understand why it's critical, but it's listed as critical. Moving on to the other code execution bugs this month, you have your standard RAS bugs. That's going to be there. A whole bunch of Office component bugs that are open and known, where the preview pane is not an attack vector. There's a frightening looking bug in SMB client, requires authentication. Not so scary there. Same for the NTFS bug. The bug in SharePoint requires site owner permissions, but if you have the permissions to create a site, you have site owner permissions. And then finally, graphics component that requires user interaction. All in all, when it comes to critical and code execution bugs, not a very exciting month. Moving on to EOP, we've got a bunch of them. I think almost 40 if I counted correctly. And most of them just lead to system level code execution. So, okay. The ones in Defender Firewall Service are a bit interesting because they allow an attacker to go from executing at medium integrity to local system. So you get a little bit more permissions that way. The bug in Azure Connected Machine Agent leads to system, but you need to update this version on your own. There's not a patch for it. You have to physically go in and update by hand. So again, the people who say just patch don't know what they're talking about because they aren't just patches. But anyway, I almost tripped on my own soapbox there. Did you see that? I stumbled. It's okay. The virtual hard drive bug is kind of interesting because it causes the system to crash. I guess in a multi-tenant situation. Otherwise, I mean, it's a authenticated user causing a system to crash. Why didn't they just unplug the power cord? But multi-tenant, can see that. There's a couple app container escapes as well. That's interesting. The multi-point services allows an attacker to delete a file, as we've seen. That can be used for privilege escalation. Bug in Xbox is a privilege escalation. It also allows for a targeted file delete. I don't know how you would actually leverage that to escalate privileges in the Xbox system. But boy, I mean, talk about wiping out your saved games. What a bummer that would be. Yeah. So the SMB bug, there's a spoofing bug in that. There's a privilege escalation. I would consider it spoofing because you get the privilege of the compromised user. There's extra steps available to harden against NTL and relay attacks, which this kind of falls under. If you haven't already, you should definitely check out that link from Microsoft and apply those extra steps as well for additional protection. Because again, there's more things than just patches to protect you. And lastly, the one from PowerShell, really interesting. This is going to be PowerShell in a virtual environment. So I would consider the spoofing, but it's still cool regardless of what you say it. An attacker can hijack a PowerShell direct session between the admin user on a host and a guest VM. So that would be really interesting. So an authenticated user to impersonate the admin host user in PowerShell. Neat. So when it comes to info disclosures, we've got over a dozen, but they're all boring, thankfully. That's good. It's good to have a boring release every now and then. All but one release really just leak the unspecified memory contents. The only exception to that is SQL Server. Sensitive information. Oh, okay, whatever sensitive information it is, that's what's leaking. Got 2 security feature bypasses. They are both in the map URL to zone. Guess what happens? Well, you've got a URL mapped to the wrong zone. Okay, pretty straightforward. Do want to warn you on those. That's the type of thing we do see exploited by ransomware. So definitely make sure that you test and deploy those quickly. Don't ignore them just because they're boring. And then finally, there's a spoofing bug in Office Plus. If you're not familiar with it, I was not familiar with it. Office Plus is a product launched by Microsoft China back in 2022, and it allows you access to a bunch of Office templates. So like PowerPoint templates and things like that. So presumably you would be spoofing access and getting access to those somehow or another. There's 3 DOS bugs. Again, crickets from Microsoft and what they actually do. Just note that they would deny service. So, okay, there you have it. And that wraps it up. That is quite the light September. And I will be back in October to talk about it. I will also be on the road in October. I will be in Ireland, setting up for Pwn to Own Ireland. So join me there as we get set up, and hopefully we'll have a fantastic contest to talk about that afterwards. So until then, stay safe, and may all your reboots be smooth and clean.